General Hospital spoilers for the next 2 weeks, from April 28 to May 9, tease that one of the biggest issues brewing in Christina Corinthos Davis's life is the formation of a new raging storm, an intense change quietly building up, pushing her to the brink of an explosion. After months of trying to suppress her emotions, bury her guilt, and avoid the truth, these things have turned into an unbearable burden. Christina feels it, every second, as though there is a chaotic whirlwind spinning in her mind, demanding that she confront everything she has feared the most. The change in Christina's soul is no longer something that can be ignored. It's a drastic shift. A moment when she realizes there is no turning back. And in the midst of this violent upheaval, Christina makes a shocking decision. She will confess to all the crimes she has committed, regardless of the consequences that could destroy her entire life. She knows this confession isn't just about admitting a few minor mistakes. It's the revelation of the darkest things she has tried to hide, the exposing of the schemes, the dangerous games she was pulled into, or even played a part in. It's the moment Christina chooses to face the ghosts inside her, rather than continue to be imprisoned by them. But what Christina cannot fully anticipate is the new, insane danger quietly growing from the very act that seems like bravery. Once the confession is out, she not only exposes herself but also drags a number of other characters into the scandal, including Ava Jerome, the one Christina once trusted, even feared. Ava spent a long time weaving a web of lies, forcing Christina to act according to her dark plans. Ava thought she could control Christina forever, like a puppet, but she underestimated the inner strength of this young woman. Now, as Christina prepares to expose everything, Ava's elaborate plan is beginning to fall apart, piece by piece, quickly and uncontrollably. Ava realizes the danger, but it's too late to stop it. The secrets she has kept hidden are about to be revealed, threatening not only her current schemes but potentially dragging along a number of past sins she committed. Ava's plan is collapsing. And this time, it's Christina who will wield the hammer to strike the first blows. The madness doesn't stop there. As Christina's confession spread, a series of unforeseen consequences begin to unfold. Allies turn away, enemies become more vicious, and Port Charles is thrown into a violent earthquake. Christina is no longer a helpless victim, she is becoming a force that will destroy everything false and decayed. However, Christina understands that she will not escape the painful consequences of her decision. When the truth erupts, she will face betrayal from loved ones, scorn from the community, and even punishment from the law. But for Christina, the liberation from the shackles of guilt is worth more than any freedom outside. She chooses the pain, the struggle, and the truth, even if the price is her own life. In the final days before the truth is revealed, Christina lives in painful indecision. There are moments when she wants to turn back, to remain silent, and continue living in the fake shell she's built. But then she looks in the mirror, gazes into her own eyes, and she knows she can't lie to herself any longer. Ava, sensing the approaching danger, begins taking desperate measures to salvage the situation. She tries to threaten, bribe, and even manipulate the story to make Christina appear as the liar, the one who has lost control. But Ava has made the biggest mistake. She forgot that a person who has nothing left to lose is the most dangerous. Christina, with all her wounds and profound understanding of her own pain, can no longer be intimidated. She has gone too far to turn back. A new chapter in her life is opening, a chapter of challenges, courage, and possibly self-destruction. But Christina accepts it all. Because for her, the truth is always worth more than any price. When she steps in front of everyone, preparing to confess, the entire world of Port Charles holds its breath. Because everyone knows. After Christina reveals everything, no one in this city will remain unscathed. Ava will no longer have her throne, hidden enemies will surface. And the terrifying secrets that have been sealed for so long will rise to the surface, sweeping everything away in an unstoppable storm. Port Charles will never be the same, and Christina Corinthos Davis, whether she falls or stands tall, will forever be marked in the history of this city as the one who chose truth over false safety. Sunny is still trapped in an unending nightmare as the threats from Los Angeles continue to surround him like a deadly fog. After narrowly escaping a brutal assassination attempt, Sunny realizes that his old enemies are constantly adjusting their plans, making things crazier and more out of control than ever. The attacks no longer occur simply as bullets fired from the shadows or crude ambushes. They have evolved. They have learned. They are turning their hatred into a sophisticated strategy. A psychological war designed to slowly push Sunny into a corner with no way out. With each passing day, Sunny feels the walls closing in. He no longer knows who to trust, where to rely. Every communication that once seemed safe now carries the marks of betrayal. Those who once swore loyalty, partners who once shook hands in agreement, could all have been bought off or manipulated by his enemies. Sunny understands that the enemies in Los Angeles don't just want to kill him, they want to destroy him, to wipe out the name, the power, and the trust he has built throughout his life. They are playing a long, ruthless game, where every small gesture, every careless decision could set off his downfall. The initial attacks were vague signs, small thefts, leaked information, mysterious deaths with no one taking responsibility. But as time goes on, they become bolder. An explosion in one of the apartments Sunny uses as a hideout. A close ally is ambushed and killed in the night. A shipment disappears right before their eyes. Anonymous threats are sent to Sunny's loved ones. Every strike is aimed at his patience, his heart, and his spirit. Sunny used to be the one holding everything in his hands. Now, he is walking on a thin wire, where each step could be a deadly trap. The tension inside him is like a stretched string, so tight that even the slightest tremor could snap it. And the most terrifying part is, Sunny realizes he's losing the most precious thing, control. The story of this new, insane adjustment is not just about stronger enemies or bigger schemes. It's about Sunny fighting in a world where the old rules have completely collapsed. Respect, fear, loyalty, everything that once protected him now means nothing. In this new world, there's no room for the glorious reputations of the past, only cold, brutal survival. Sunny knows he can't continue handling things the same way. He needs real allies. He turns to Carly, who has always been the most steadfast shield during storms. He calls Jason, the brother who is not by blood but always ready to sacrifice for him. He talks to Dante, the son he trusts but also knows carries deep conflicts. Sunny understands that to survive, he must gather those he can trust, to build a fortress with love, loyalty, and ruthlessness, the things this world demands. But even when Carly agrees, when Jason promises to always stand by him, and when Dante vows to find the one behind all this, Sunny cannot shake the feeling that part of him has shattered. What he once trusted, once protected, is now like rocks being worn down little by the waves of hatred. In the long sleepless nights, Sunny sits alone in the dark, listening to his heart race, beating out of sync from the anxiety. He thinks about the enemies lurking out there, patiently waiting for the moment he makes a mistake to strike the final blow. And he swears, with everything he has left, that he will not fall easily. The story of Sunny now is no longer about an invincible crime boss. It's the story of a man fighting to protect his soul, to regain control of his life before everything is swept away in a tsunami of betrayal and death. It's a story about courage, about resilience, and about accepting a brutal truth, that sometimes, to survive, one must become more dangerous than the nightmares they face. Sunny knows, the real storm is still ahead. The schemes from Los Angeles have only just begun. And in the bloody days to come, Port Charles will no longer be a peaceful land. Sunny will have to fight not only to save his life but also to save himself, a fight in which, this time, there is no room for compromise. No second chances, no forgiveness. Willow would hardly believe her eyes as she stepped into the room and saw Drew lying in bed with another woman. The image struck like a cold knife through her heart, a wave of dizziness nearly shattering Willow's sense of reason in that moment. Every belief, every hope, every dream she had nurtured with Drew seemed to collapse in an instant. Willow couldn't stop herself from thinking that Drew had betrayed her. That all the promises and vows they had made to each other were nothing but lies. But beneath that shattering surface, a much more twisted story was quietly unfolding, a story of change. Of uncontrollable adjustments, that were gradually pushing everything out of orbit. In reality, what Willow had walked in on was only a small part of a much more complex game, a new, mad, and cruel adjustment that had been orchestrated from the beginning with the goal of breaking Drew, driving him away from Willow, and entangling both of them in an inescapable maze. The initial calculations that everyone believed would resolve the situation had been manipulated by unseen hands, twisted into darker schemes, dirtier games. Turning this story not into a simple betrayal of love, but a bloody battlefield of ambitious, hidden forces. One of the adjustments currently unfolding was the complete restructuring of Willow and Drew's relationship, no longer built on trust but on suspicion, doubt, and irreparable hurt. The masterminds behind it had intentionally staged the moment that Willow would witness, sowing seeds of doubt and outrage in her heart, ensuring she could no longer listen to reason, nor trust any explanation from Drew. And because of this new, twisted adjustment, everything between them was being pushed further apart, further than either of them ever imagined possible. Drew, who still didn't understand what was happening, would find himself cornered in an unresolvable situation. He would try to explain, beg Willow to trust him, hold her hand, look deep into her eyes, and swear that there was a terrible misunderstanding. But Willow, haunted by that dreadful image, tormented by feelings of shame and betrayal, would no longer have the strength to believe any of his justifications. She would turn away, walking out, leaving Drew to writhe in his own despair. But this crazy adjustment didn't stop there. The shadowy forces pulling the strings wouldn't allow any opportunity for Willow and Drew to reconcile. Everything had been programmed to go further, to create a chain of misunderstandings, accusations, moments of resentment, and irreversible mistakes. Every step Willow took, every reaction Drew had been calculated and adjusted to ensure they would grow further apart, hurting each other more and more. The tension between them would continue to escalate, not just into anger or heartbreak, but into despair, blind jealousy, and a simmering hatred that couldn't be extinguished. Willow wouldn't just be angry from the feeling of being deceived, she would feel as if the entire world she trusted was betraying her. Drew wouldn't just suffer from being misunderstood, he would be pushed to the edge of losing control, where anger and helplessness would blend into a dark and dangerous emotion. What began as a moment of discovery in a bed now became a full-scale campaign designed to tear apart, destroy, and crush everything left between Willow and Drew. This new, increasingly violent, and brutal adjustment was pulling them into a spiral with no escape, where every attempt to fix things would only make everything worse. And if no one noticed the hands pulling the strings in the darkness, the story between Willow and Drew might not end in tears of forgiveness, but in rage, in irremediable destruction, and in the complete fracturing of two souls once deeply connected. Kai was preparing for one of the most fateful moments of his life, a surgery whose outcome could forever change his future. In the final days before he would lie on the operating table, Kai was filled with a chaotic mix of hope and deep fear. Hope for a new chance to live, to fulfill unfinished dreams, and fear that one small mistake could make him lose everything, or worse, wake up to a reality worse than death itself. But while Kai wrestled with these emotions, a new story, a crazy adjustment, was silently exploding around him, turning everything into chaos beyond his control. The truth was that the funding Kai received for the surgery was no accident. It came from Drew, whom Kai had once thought of as just a friend, a compassionate ally. But Drew's presence in this journey was far more complicated than it seemed. Drew wasn't just a sponsor. He was the one adjusting the entire course of Kai's life in ways Kai hadn't even realized. This new adjustment, the seed of deep obsessions, began to sprout in Kai's heart. He began to wonder why Drew cared so much about him, why he had chosen Kai among all the others who needed help. The answer didn't seem to lie in simple kindness. There was a calculation, a dark purpose hiding behind Drew's smiles, encouraging words, and generous checks. And it was this growing suspicion, this slow but sure awakening, That was making Kai the latest victim of a game he didn't know he had been pulled into. Kai started to feel as though he was being watched, controlled every step of the way. Calls from Drew. Seemingly harmless advice, casual questions about his schedule, thoughts, feelings, all these began to form a terrifying picture that Kai couldn't ignore. Every time he closed his eyes and thought about the future, Drew's image loomed like an invisible hand, squeezing his fate, shaping every choice, every thought that Kai thought he was making freely. This new adjustment wasn't just affecting Kai. It was creeping into the lives of those around him, into relationships he once believed were pure. His friends were growing distant. Trina, who had always been there for him, was starting to have silent doubts, giving him worried looks that Kai couldn't help but notice. No one said anything, but everyone felt that something was wrong. Something insidious and dangerous was tightening its grip on them. Kai knew that if he went under the knife in this state, he wasn't just putting his life in the hands of the doctors, he was betting everything he was, everything he believed in, on a game where the rules had already been bent. He wasn't sure if, after the surgery, he would wake up as himself, or if he would become just another puppet in the hands of those manipulating human destinies like a card game. And the worst part was, Kai felt there was no way out. The costs, the constraints, the sweet yet trap-laden promises from Drew had created a web Kai couldn't escape. If he refused, he would lose the only chance to save himself. If he accepted, he would step deeper into a conspiracy he couldn't yet see the full picture of. But knew for sure it wouldn't end with a happy conclusion. In the final moments before surgery, Kai stood alone in the cold hospital corridor, hearing the echoes of footsteps in his mind like the final ticks of a countdown clock. He knew that once he lay on that operating table, his life would change forever. Not just because of the surgery, but because of the crazy adjustments, the malicious schemes that had been planted and were now preparing to take root in his body and soul. Kai closed his eyes, sighed deeply as if trying to summon every last bit of courage he had left. He knew his choices were running out. But he also swore to himself that no matter what happened, he would fight. He would not let anyone, whether Drew or any other force, determine his fate. He would find a way to break the crazy adjustment binding him, or be swallowed by it. But at least he wouldn't surrender so easily. The identity of Gio was finally confirmed, a truth that was supposed to bring relief and closure to those involved. Yet, in reality, it marked the beginning of a series of even crazier, more chaotic shifts than ever before. That truth didn't close the story, it, in fact, triggered a chain reaction of new adjustments. New waves of turmoil, pulling everyone into a whirlwind that couldn't be stopped. Instead of bringing safety, the confirmation revealed that deep-rooted troubles and simmering conflicts were silently boiling over into a violent storm, pushing everything further out of control than it had ever been before. Lulu and Brooke Lynn, the central figures in this storm, were beginning to make their own insane adjustments, fueled by emotional calculations, selfish motives, and growing obsessions that were slowly consuming their hearts. Lulu, who had been overwhelmed and pained by the truth about Gio, began to change her approach to everything. She was no longer the woman hoping for a peaceful resolution, she was slowly turning into someone ready to do whatever it took, at any cost, to defend her views and choices. She altered her behavior, her perceptions of others, and the way she made decisions, all stemming from one simple truth: she could no longer trust anyone completely. Brooke Lynn, once seen as the mediator, the bridge between everyone, was also starting her own insane adjustments. When Joe's identity was revealed, Brooke Lynn felt herself pushed into a no-win situation. Pressure from her family, her past, and the secrets she had kept for so long made her act more impulsively and erratically. She no longer thought things through carefully. She began making risky decisions, compromising her own beliefs just to protect what she considered to be right, or at least to protect the secrets she couldn't let anyone else uncover. The new story unfolding was no longer just about Joe's identity. It had become a chain reaction of madness, where each action, each word, each choice made by Lulu and Brooke Lynn only added more complexity, more chaos, more loss of control. These new adjustments, the increasingly chaotic changes in their thinking and actions, not only drove a wedge between the two women but also placed everyone around them in danger. Willow, Drew, Chase, and even those who seemed to be on the outside, like Dante or Trina, could feel the violent tremors of this storm. Everyone felt uneasy, everyone felt pulled into a game where the rules were changing every minute, every second. And within this chaos, the truth about Gio, about what had happened, and the secrets still buried, was becoming more distorted, warped by fear, greed, and the selfish motives secretly controlling each step of the people involved. The most terrifying part wasn't just what had happened, it was what was about to happen. As Lulu and Brooke Lynn continued to slide deeper into their own insane adjustments, with mistake upon mistake piling up, one undeniable truth was becoming clear. This wasn't going to end in forgiveness or understanding, it was going to end in collapse, in betrayal, in irreparable loss. This new madness, ignited by the confirmation of Joe's identity, had now evolved into a brutal, covert war that no one could control. With each passing day, the masks fell away, revealing faces twisted by pain, by despair, by hatred. And when the truth was finally laid bare, poor Charles would witness a battle not just of words, but of the desperate actions of people who had nothing left to lose.